Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Hey everyone, it's Beyond the Frontline, and this is Donna, and I am Sans, my partner in crime, Jay. He said he was off teaching classes, and then he was getting on a plane, and I don't know if that's a plane for a job or a plane for Tahiti, so anybody's guess, but I'll find out when the Facebook pictures come up, so I'll let you know what that looks like. But in the meantime, I get the pleasure of having a discussion with a really cool person, and I say this in all sincerity, and his name is Dave Peterson. Dave is actually currently the Executive Vice President of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, but he has a pretty cool rap sheet because he's a veteran, and I'm just going to go through this on the summary side of it. I cheated and looked on LinkedIn. He was an Academy grad. He was a command pilot. He has over 4,100 hours of flight instructor and examiner hours. And you were a fighter pilot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I will tease you later about that. He did fly in combat during a Desert Storm and provide comfort. And then in 2013, he retired from the Air Force as the AETC Deputy Director of Operations Flying Training as a one-star general. And then after retirement, he jumped into a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to kind of talk about what he did. I think this is important that we don't ever talk about is high-level transition. When we think about transition, we think of people from mid-level to and what comes with that, but we really don't talk about the senior level people, colonels, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. So it's kind of unique. So Dave, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Donna.
And I know Dave because, weirdly, he probably doesn't know this, but he was actually my husband's boss when he was in his deputy role. But he has a restaurant that him and his wife started, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I don't know, I started going to eat there, loved the food, met him, enjoyed conversation, and we've just talked on different realms. And then I found out different things he was doing, and we've chit-chatted more and more. And then the next thing you know, actually Jay was like, hey, let's bring Dave Peterson on. I'm like, that's a great idea. So we're going to talk about the two things. One that I just mentioned was transitioning at a high level. What does this look like? Because people have a lot of assumptions. And then two, we're going to end this talking about what he's doing now in the chamber and what the chamber is and how it's helpful to people that are starting businesses, have businesses, work in businesses. And even if you're just an individual trying to figure it out, why it's a good place to go check out. So let's start with transition. 2013 was your drop date. That's when you retired, huh?
Yep. It was 1 November was the official date. Last day of work was the end of July.
And so that was July. Okay. So kind of take me through steps. Like what happened? What were you going through? Because I look at your sheet and I just giggled because, boom, you immediately started doing things, literally almost immediately. So what was going on with you first?
Yeah, sure. Like a lot of us, I had kids in college and, I had a lot of, I had bills to pay and everything else, and going to half pay, a little over half pay, but based on timing. But, I needed to fill that gap. Clearly I didn't, I had options, but, the retirement's great. But like everybody else, it's not what it once was. And if that's the way you were living and you want to make that up, then you got to figure out what that's going to be. So I set about trying to figure out what I wanted to be. I had met, so the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce had hosted a lot of things with the military, and I'd met the CEO at several events, and so I asked him if I could meet with him and talk about what opportunities there were in San Antonio for, a guy retiring out of positions like I had. And I met with him, took me to lunch, and we talked through it, and he didn't have the magic fairy dust or the magic wand to make anything happen, but he said, I'll put you on our newsletter and you can kind of keep track of what's going on. And if you're interested in something that we're doing, let me know and I'll invite you to join us at it. I said, well, that's great. I appreciate it. But as you can suspect, nothing immediately happened and it wasn't emergent. I wasn't as a pilot, a lot of people like me go to the airlines. That wasn't really totally appealing to me at that point in my life. So the reason I came in the Air Force actually was to be an airline pilot. But so I tell people often the one goal I had in life I've never achieved, but somewhat intentionally. And then I didn't really want to get in the defense industry. And that just didn't, I wanted to try something new. I wanted to kind of get out and do something different. Nothing against defense industry or my career. I enjoyed it immensely, worked with great people, and I knew the folks in those spaces were doing great stuff, but I wanted to try different things. So I looked at oil and gas. I looked at, other opportunities around San Antonio, and I talked to many folks, but nothing really, there was no obvious solution jumping forward. So a friend of mine was working for one of the major defense contractors that was competing in the replacement for the T-38. And I was talking to him and he said, well, we can bring you on as a consultant because we'd like to have you on the team. And I said, okay, well, I'm interested in that. But that was going to be very kind of limited once a month for a couple of days. And I said, I really like to get more than that. And he said, well, the company's got another effort going on and it was up in Fort Worth, I'll get you connected to that. So I reached out, got connected, and they said, yeah, we need help. We just won this contract. We didn't expect to win, and we're trying to, go all hands on deck on it. I said, well, that's great because that really filled out the rest of the month where I'd work, about 3 days every week as a consultant. And,
that's nice.
So self-employed. Yeah, I had to travel a little bit, either to DC or up to Fort Worth. But, they pay pretty well. But if anybody's interested in being self-employed, take a good, hard look at that.
Oh, yes.
I got great advice from a mentor of mine who said, hey, when they pay you, set half of that aside for taxes.
Yep.
And he was not wrong.
I'm finding out.
Yeah. You look at it and you say, wow, that's a lot of money. But then you realize you're going to turn around and hand half of that back to the government. So that was pretty eye-opening.
You have to be, in my opinion, if you're going to go do something like that, post-military, like retirement and stuff, you really need to have your ducks in a row. Like your bills are paid. You can handle your home stuff with like your retirement and VA and stuff like that before you jump in. Because if you're dealing with financial issues and you jump into a business, that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did that for about a year and I dabbled with some other opportunities, other programs friends of mine were involved with or whatnot, but didn't get a lot of traction on those others. But at the end of the first year of consulting for them, both of the programs that I was on basically were getting canceled for various reasons. Part of them being some of the advice and counsel myself and other consultants gave wasn't heeded. So the other piece of being a consultant is you're really not on the team and they really pick and choose what information of yours they want to use.
Yep.
And so it's not totally fulfilling in that regard. But the same month that those two jobs were ending, the Chamber, whose weekly newsletter I was getting, advertised that or mentioned or put a posting out that the executive vice president was retiring and they were going to soon be looking for applicants. So I was losing my two consulting gigs, but I said, well, let me take a look at the Chamber stuff. So I called the CEO, asked him what he wanted. And I think an important thing with that is he kind of really laid out what they were looking for. And I took my resume and made it look just like what they were looking at. So in some of my early job searches, when I first retired, I sent kind of a cookie cutter resume around, and I quickly found out
doesn't work.
From the company, that's not
not the way to go. Yeah.
So you really need to tailor your resume to what you want to portray. And, you have to be careful. In my positions, I was responsible for quite a, big numbers, and in the Air Force on your OPR, you throw around all the biggest numbers you can find.
Oh, yes.
But that scares some companies. They're like, hey, you worked in billions. We work in hundreds of thousands. We're not sure,
if that's a match.
You're overqualified. So you have to be kind of thoughtful around that.
Let me ask this question. When you are retiring, So I've helped Jay a little bit. He's done some ETAPs, and I've been in the room and helped him do that. I don't see any stars in that room. I see lots of birds and kernels, and but I don't see any stars in there. So what is that? What do you get? Do you get your own tap? Do you get your own you have General's tap or something, or is it?
Yeah, they probably renamed it 6 times since I retired, but
sure.
there's a. At the time I was in, the course was at Bowling, and so you would go to DC TDY, and then they had the tap course there. And
Specific.
It was interesting as they instructed on how to write a resume, and I think it's what they taught was more defense industry / military, where they said get everything onto 2 pages. And so I wrote my resume, and I have a cousin that was a headhunter at the time, and so he'd seen hundreds of thousands of resumes. So I sent him mine, and he took it, flipped it over a couple times, and called me right back. And he said, "Hey, you were in the Air Force for 30 years, right?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "That doesn't come through in 2 pages. You need to write a little bit more. This needs to be longer to portray what you have done."
Yeah.
So, I think tailoring the resume to the audience is important in that regard as well. So I've got multiple variants of it, and got some software where you can move things around and adjust, and I think that's worthwhile for anybody trying to do that.
How long was the course for you? Was it a 5-day course, or?
I believe it was 5 days. I think we flew in on Sunday, and maybe we were done Thursday, so maybe it was 4 days.
4 days. So it's pretty similar. It feels like a fire hose, though, because it's just all coming at you. I don't care what level you're at. It's just literally information by fire hose. It's very overwhelming. And do you, same thing, 2 years out, you can do it up to, that kind of thing? Or is it specific for?
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
And again,
how far out were you?
I was probably 6-8 months out, something like that. When I did it. So, it wasn't as early as I probably should have, but it wasn't super late.
Yeah. It's if I was telling people, I'd be like, do it somewhere around 18 months, and then do it again at 8 months, or to refresh, because there's so much information on there. It is really a struggle. Let me ask this too. When you had your retirement, I'm going to back up a little, and then we'll hop forward to what you were doing. I'm going to put you a little under the microscope. That was it. Change of command ceremony. And for our civilian audience, if you've never seen a general change of command ceremony, I've stood in plenty of them. They're impressive. We all have to come to attention. Did you have the whole shebang when they did it?
Well, I didn't, because I was in a staff position. So, I wasn't a commander when I retired, but, we had a big ceremony, and invited everybody in, and,
it's impressive to see them. When that was done, what was your last day? Your very last day, terminal was done. It was all done.
When terminal was done?
Yeah.
I was already consulting.
You were already consulting on there. What was your last day of work in the military when you went on terminal?
Yeah, the last day in the military, end of July. So I did a Finney flight. As a pilot, you have to be thoughtful about when you time your VA physical, because if they find something that could ground you, then you could end your flying career
very quickly. Yep, seen that happen.
So, I was really, that last week was, getting ready for the ceremony, getting all my stuff handed off to, the incoming, and making sure that, everybody knew where all the important stuff was. And then really, taking care of the medical and getting through all the paperwork and ID cards and, all the stuff that everybody goes through when they retire.
Did you have any downtime? It was done. Did you stop and breathe?
Yeah, I had probably, I think it was about a month of really not doing anything. But like I said, I was, I know there's some people that take off for 6 months and have not a care in the world. But, I had kids that, I had to pay for college, and, I didn't have to pay, but I was paying for college and having to do other things,
right?
Other financial commitments. So I took a little bit of time to decompress, but I quickly started going, okay, now let's get serious about finding something. And
how many people were under you when you were?
Oh, I don't know, a couple of hundred maybe.
Yeah. And you were handling huge budgets. And so, and I'm setting up a scene just for people to understand. So you have a couple hundred people under you. You're handling massive budgets. Your day-to-day is literally nearly 24/7. You're go, go, go. You know, you've got a lot going on, and then you come out the door and then boop, you're now Dave, not General Peterson anymore. And so, and I say all that not in jest, but in like, what did it feel like when it was like I remember, I'll relate mine to college. I remember the first day when I graduated college and I went to bed and I opened my eyes and I realized it was the first day I didn't have a checklist in my head. And I was like, dang. So like, what did that feel like for you? Like that first day?
Yeah, it really kind of felt more like taking leave.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, you're off for a little bit and, you know, if you've done it correctly, you're not worried about what's going on at work. It's covered and you're okay. And you can relax and not think about anything, but you know, you're going back to work, you know, before long. So for me, I knew, you know, I was going to find something. I was going to get back to work. So mine was kind of more like a leave scenario than actually, you know, breaking ties. But I was going to a new job of some kind. I was going to try to do something very different. So.
Did you feel weird? I hit my own mic here. I've tried to explain this to people and it doesn't really come out right. But did you hear the story of there was a gentleman that was a Walmart greeter, and whether or not this is true or not, I don't know, but it is and so he's, you know, a couple minutes late for work. I could see his face. He's heard it. So for the audience, they're a couple minutes late for work, and he does this like all week. And his supervisor, whoever it is, comes to him and says, "Hey, Frank, you know, like you've been like 10 minutes late for work every day." He's like, "You know, when you were in the military, you know, what did they say to you if you showed up 10 minutes late for work?" And he was like, "Here's your coffee, General." And so, you know, we chuckle at that. I try to explain it to people, and it just does not, it just translates arrogantly. It doesn't come across, but there are uniform talks, right? If you know, when I walk into Mako's, and if I didn't know you and you were just sitting there, you know, I'd see you as one of the patrons potentially, right? If I walked into Mako's and you're there for lunch from work and I see the stars, I'm going to be like, where can I sit that way? Right? And I say that humorously, but the reality is I can read everything I need to read. I read, you know, well, it used to be your shoulders, but it's in the front now. But I can read the rank. I can see the Corps badge. I can see the name. And I already know where the lineup is. I know where I am in the hen pecking order. I know how I am behaving. I know what I may or may not be saying. Like, there's a lot that's happening when we all come together, right? And then you turn around and I walk out the door and I'm in my shirt and my pants and I have to go talk to somebody about X, Y, or Z, and I'm Donna. You know, no rank, no nothing. Did that feel weird to you at all? Or everybody's different, you know? Some people weird, some wasn't.
Yeah, everybody is different in that regard, particularly generals. You know, there's some that, you know, their signature block contains their, you know, whatever retired rank. And then there's others, you know, General Goldfein lives here in town and cross paths with him periodically. And he says his new call sign is JD, just Dave. He's just Dave. And so that's kind of his approach. But, you know, I never threw that out there. I mean, obviously, like I said, I did get hired in the defense industry to consult. So they obviously wanted my experience and my wherewithal. But so it was on the resumes and all. But once I was working there, you know, a lot of the people I worked with didn't realize, you know, what positions I'd held or anything. We would have conversations. And some, when they find out, they won't call you anything but general.
I hear you.
To this day.
I struggle with that too. Folks, I'm not a general. Let me just tell you that. But I was similar. I never put my rank out there. I never put anything. If somebody asks me, I mean, I'll answer it. But it is very interesting to see what people do, because then I get mammed to death. And I'm like, oh, Lord. Yeah. Donna's fine.
And I'm not ashamed of it at all.
No.
I'm very proud of my service. I did, you know, some really neat things, and I worked with the most fantastic people, you know, I've ever had the opportunity to work with. But, you know, that's not the phase I'm in now. I'm in a different phase, and I need to be, in my mind, respected for the work I'm doing and what it is I'm doing now. And so if people do start to call me by my rank, I try to say, hey, listen, you can just call me Dave, but there's some that just won't drop it. And then that's fine. It's not a big issue to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It just to attest to your character. You and I actually met last night. I was kind of updating you on some things that were going on. And I actually remember somebody was leaving the restaurant, and we'll talk about your restaurant in a little while, but we were sitting there talking, and I just watched one of the people that work for you walk by and say goodnight and fist bump you. And it said a lot to me, like their comfort level with you isn't stiff. It's very, you're Dave, and it's a very warm environment. And so I think that it says a lot right there. So it's a good thing, because I personally think that sometimes when that gets thrown out, I really think things can become limited. Ideas can become limited. Thoughts can become limited because people they kind of almost put themselves back in the military, and we're like, we're not there. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It can really stifle, because then people put whatever their impression of that on it, and that may or may not be the case. There's probably some absolutely terrible generals. There's absolutely fantastic ones. Most of them probably fall right in the middle.
Yeah.
And so, I think with anyone, I try not to preconceive anything about anybody, and let them explain.
Yep.
But to your point about wearing the uniform and having qualifications and all of that, I think the hardest thing I've seen outside of the Air Force and the various things I've done is in the Air Force. If I had a electronic technician, I knew what they did, what they were trained to. If they were a 3 level, 5 level, 7 level, I knew what they could do, what they couldn't do. Life support technician, pick a field, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what the expectation was. In the outside world, you don't know. They've got a job title, and that title may be indicative of what they do. It may not be. They may be, well trained, or they may be winging it. And so it's interesting. And like in the restaurant business, oh, I've been a cook. Well, where have you cooked and what have you done? And,
right. Is that Wendy's or a Michelin star restaurant? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, there's a broad category there.
Well, let's talk about the restaurant, because the same year you retired, this just made me giggle. I remember, actually, I was looking at your stuff and I went, oh my God, Makos has been around for 10 years. I still feel like it was 3 years ago, but.
Well, that's when we formed the LLC. So we actually opened the doors 5 years ago.
Ah, okay. So I saw the 10. All right. Got you. So tell that story though, because that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I had a friend or I still do. He's a good friend. He owns a couple of golf courses around town here. And I said, what's it like to own golf courses? And he said, well, it's pretty cool. You can make a small fortune doing that. I said, wow, that's cool. And he goes, let me tell you how you do it. You start with a large fortune.
And you're like, never mind.
Yeah. So anyway, the restaurant industry is really interesting. We lived not far from the base in Cibolo, and there really wasn't anything retail-wise in Cibolo other than, a couple of Mexican restaurants, but none of the other stuff had really happened yet. There was a lot of talk of plans going, but the rooftops continued to grow and grow and grow. The building was really happening. So we saw, and we looked at, the data for the area. Well, rewinding a little bit, while I was consulting, so we didn't start it right in the first year of retirement, but shortly thereafter. So the second year we formed the LLC. But my wife and oldest son said, hey, there's nothing in this area. We need to just open, kind of a place people want to go to, a bar, restaurant kind of thing that, would be kind of cool. And I said, well, I think somebody should do that, but I'm not sure it's us. And they kept, saying they thought it was a good idea. And so I finally just said, well, let's sit down. Let's start working on a business plan. Let's talk about what this could be and all of that. And so that's where the ideation started. And that took, a good year and a half. Started talking to bankers, other people in the industry about, challenges, opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And we got going on it. We bounced a couple different banks because of, well, we're not going to support that or this or whatever. Found one that's been very supportive throughout, and, got everything lined up. My older son was researching for the restaurant, but got hired into a great job that, he's been with now, promoted several times through that. And so my middle son jumped in and helped us when he graduated college. And so he helped me oversee the construction. We built from the ground up, which people tell you not to do. Now I understand why.
It's beautiful, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of challenges in the construction world. So we were able to get that worked out, but that's an entire podcast to itself. And then,
would you do it again that way?
I would do things differently. So this is the first
major
construction project I've been part of. But we learned, and it was challenging and it was great. Working with my son was fantastic. I think we both got a greater, deeper appreciation of each other. And so that was fantastic. And then he stayed on as our general manager once we opened. So we opened June of 2019, that last little race to get open. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Hiring people, getting the team put together, those are very challenging, especially we weren't the chefs. So we were hiring a chef. And so there's that is a challenge in and of itself. Like I said, when you say we're looking for a chef, a lot of different people come forward. So we now have a chef that's been with us 4 years and, is just fantastic. And,
I'll attest to the food. It's really good.
and you need a good, solid team. We had folks with us early on that, weren't as dedicated as the team we've got now is stuck with us, throughout. And some of them were, from the very get-go. So it's just great. We've got a bar manager that really can run the restaurant when we're not around. He's run his own place before. So having all of
that's comforting.
That's really, really important to a business. But it's a lot of work. The pandemic was challenging. We're still working to get our way, back from that. And as a lot of the folks in the industry are, and it's a labor of love. We love doing it, and we've met more great people through it. So it's just fantastic. But there's a lot to the industry to learn.
But you guys do it well. I mean, I just met your wife yesterday, and she's sweet as can be, and just like everybody there, it's very welcoming, it's very inviting, and I mean, the environment you set up it's top notch. I mean, people are return guests. We were there for Easter. I mean, it was really good.
That's, our goal was to be a welcoming place. If you want to sit in the bar and hang out or sit on the patio, watch the sunset, you can do that. If you want to, bring a date and get dressed up, you can. One of the challenges early on is we got a reputation as the date night place. And so, people would only
fancy.
Come out. Yeah, fancy. And so from the get-go, our uniform for our staff has been T-shirts and jeans.
Yeah.
Our restaurant T-shirts, so they're clean and well kept. But trying to tamp down, that you've got to dress up, because if you want to, that's great.
You have trivia night. I still have to get out for that. I saw that. I'm like, oh, hey, Makos has trivia night. So
we had that last night. Went real well. It's every Wednesday, 6:30 to 8.
Oh, I don't remember that.
That just is a lot of fun. Jay's come, so
yes, I've seen him come, and I get the kids have stuff after school all the time, and I'm literally like chasing myself from 3 to 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then I'm like, oh man, I forgot about that. I had to put it on the calendar. So when you did Makos, you got that going, but that was your wife. That's your wife's baby, right? I mean, that's her. She's running it, because it's not like you were just focusing on that. You didn't stop. What were you doing in between that? And it wasn't small either. Yeah, no. So the first year I did that consulting work, and then the chamber was hiring, so I applied for that position. The other thing I think that maybe some transition courses don't explain fully is, in the jobs I've been hired into, it can take 6 months or more to do a hiring. We in the airports always acted like it was ridiculous for particularly civilian hiring to take a long time, but that's kind of been the norm that I'm seeing in the business community as well in a lot of places. But so I got to the chamber. I got hired on. My last interview was with the chair of the chamber at the time, which was the former mayor and former HUD secretary, Henry Cisneros. And his big question to me was, listen, you've been working national and international issues. The chamber works really around city and local issues. Can you do that? And so I said, I'm pretty sure I can. I mean, it's issues just like it was internationally or nationally, and you just got to work through them and figure it out. And, it usually revolves around money, people, or time, and so you got to figure that out. And apparently, my answer was good enough, and so I've
started with the chamber. I was here for about a year, and I got a call from a recruiter at USAA that said, "Hey, we're looking to bring some folks on board. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure." And told my boss here, I said, "Hey, I've got a recruiter from USAA calling. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. They've got lots of choices." But that whole process took about 6 months, and I got hired into USAA. So I got hired as the chief of staff of the bank, started there, and the week I started, the bank president that hired me departed the company very abruptly that week.
Oh, God.
And so kind of the job and the vision that he had kind of went with him. And so I was there in the bank, but it really never kind of filled out the way it was going to under his vision. So I moved to another part of the company and did that for a bit, and was in contact back with the chamber, and the CEO, had hired somebody to fill my position, and that individual had left. And, he was kind of looking, and I, kind of was missing some of the things about the chamber that was going on. And so I decided to come back to the chamber and did that. So I was at USA for about a year and a half, and then back to the chamber. And I've been there since, been here at the chamber since.
So we're going to talk about the chamber next, but I want to wrap up this part. For people at these high levels that are transitioning out, what would be your advice? Because one of the things you said was like, don't put the expectation you're just going to walk out the door and get a job. Like, it doesn't happen that way. Like, people are not fawning over you, trying to get you in there. Now, you did have some successive, luck. I mean, not luck, but I mean, like, you had opportunities successively. Not luck. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're very good at what you do. That wasn't a dig.
There's a degree of luck in everything.
There is. But in the classes that I have helped Jay with in the past, God, I mean, so that would be like a 60, 70, 80 people. One that I saw that was going to walk into a VP position out of all that. Now, lots of pilots go into airlines, stuff like that. And terminal degrees, nurses, doctors, stuff like that, a lot of them transition over to their similarity. But if you're stepping out the door and think you're just going to walk into the VP of some, big company, so how would you talk to your senior level people that are transitioning out? What advice would you give them on transitioning and expectations and whatnot?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to network. So the way I got the chamber job initially was, I knew the CEO from my time in the military. So I had begun networking even then. And I would suggest to anybody, network early and often and figure it out. And when you are networking, do a lot of listening, because that's how you're going to learn. And then, when USAA recruiter called me, the only way that I was on USAA's radar is because I worked with multiple people in the company, because they're such a big community advocate in this area that, they knew me from that. So my name got into the bucket, but really only, I think, because of my involvement, here in the community and being known to some key folks. So I would say network. I would say keep your eyes and ears open. Try to meet new and different people in whatever ways you can. And, I would say if you hear a job that sounds interesting, like the chamber did to me, take it. Give it a try. It may not be, exactly the thing that you thought you were going to do, but you may learn a lot about it as you do it. And you may then go, well, I guess I didn't understand. So I would say try something. One of the things I tell folks is in the Air Force, monogamy is valued to the job, where we really don't want anybody thinking about anything but working. We're doing better with that now, particularly at the end with SkillBridge and some of the things to allow that breakup to occur in a good way instead of abruptly without a plan. But, in the business world, people are paying attention. They're meeting with other folks. They've got networks, and the folks that, do well, are pretty well networked usually, and that's how they have opportunities. So I would say you can't undervalue that, and if there's opportunities to get more involved with that, take them.
Can generals do SkillBridge?
I believe they can. It wasn't in play when I retired, but maybe they can. I don't know. Yeah,
I'm not sure either. I honestly don't know. I'd have to. Jose Hontiveros is the one that runs it here, and I'd have to ask him. But I just want to touch on this quick. What's your thought on SkillBridge? Because what I've seen a lot, and it happened to me too, which actually worked out to be a blessing. But I had a SkillBridge set up, And I got we really need you. We can't approve that. And that's happened to many people where they're like, yeah, I saw this SkillBridge. Oh, I can't afford to lose you. So what would be your advice to commanders about SkillBridge or your thoughts on SkillBridge? And I know we all has to go down to what's going on in that area, but what's your overall thought on that?
Yeah, I think, take the long look, and it's going to hurt, to be missing somebody as incredible as Donna Hoffmeyer. But,
well, I think,
you're going to be without him in 6 months anyway.
Right.
And I know, you're not going to get a backfill while somebody's in SkillBridge. I've heard that before. But, in the corporate world, you don't get a backfill. And the part of the company I worked at USAA, we had a woman was pregnant and left on her maternity or family leave. And that's 16 weeks. She was gone 4 months, so you have to figure it out. You got to work through it. You got to come up with a plan. And, I think that's the thing to do now. If your entire section is all going on SkillBridge and you're going to be left,
right.
I think there's some conversations to be had up chain.
There's always boundaries, right? I get it. Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, we know at the micro level it has to come down to, but a really hard look is important. Could they have afforded to let me go? Oh, most definitely could. That's the only time I became very important. Those last 6 months, apparently. Again, it worked out in my favor, but at the same time, I've heard people that are just like, yeah, I didn't get it because of whatever. So I just put it out to the military community and the commanders and supervisors. If people are wanting to transition out and go to SkillBridge, really, really take a hard look and look at that, because you are allowing them to do exactly what the program is, fill the skills, right? So if there's a skills gap, it helps them build those skills and be able to go out into the civilian community and get a job a lot easier, a little less.
Well, I think, and it takes away so much stress and concern that people may have as they're approaching. Some view it as a bridge, some view it as a cliff, some view it as, whatever. But there's something ahead of them that they're not fully sure of. And, if you can help with that, then to me, that's probably a good investment. And I know there's a ton to it. And
yes, of course.
The Air Force has to make decisions based on, the needs of the Air Force as well. But, I think anything we can do to help people have a smoother transition is a good thing. And it really, I think, would be morale boosting for the organization done correctly. Now, if there's two people in the office and one leaves on SkillBridge and the other one's now got to do double duty, maybe the morale doesn't improve.
Sometimes it backfires a little, but if it's done in the appropriate way, you can distribute out their work evenly or, whatnot, not like the next rocking person gets all the work. That kind of happens.
However they can figure that out, I think, if
support it.
Take the effort to do it.
So that's one half of it. The other half, it's where you are now, and you actually led right into it perfectly. We were talking about networking, and I was the person that, like, I took a long break. Like, I kind of got fried, and I was like, okay, I need a breather. And honestly, it was my little partner in crime there, Jay, that was, why don't you come to this networking event? And I was like, oh my God, you say networking. And I was like, I need to go pull a toenail or something. It just didn't appeal to me. And probably a lot of it was just me having to kind of get through, taking a breath and kind of regrouping and whatnot. But I did. I followed along and I was like, all right, you'll be there. I'll go. That's fine. But he got me into a chamber, and I knew how to spell chamber. It's about as far as it went. I didn't understand that. So I want to talk about the chamber now and the importance. When you talk about networking, my Lord, it's one of the best places you can go. So I'm going to let you speak to that and just talk about the chamber and what it does and how you can leverage that as a person.
Yeah, well, I always tell folks, when you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber. So they're all very different.
Very true.
But the common thread tends to be they're a 501c6 membership organization. So they're a nonprofit, but not a C3 that most people are familiar with. And it's a membership organization. So it is not a government entity. Some people think it's owned by the city or run by the city. I think some take public money for the work they do, but we at the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce don't take public money. So we can be a voice for our members, and our members are businesses. So individuals can join, but largely it's businesses.
Right.
And what the chamber can do is advocate for the business community. So if the city, state, county, federal government is trying to do something that in the business community, then the chambers can step up and speak to that. So there's been issues here in San Antonio. This chamber is very focused on advocacy work. Mm-hmm. So we make a trip to the state legislature every other year when they're in session. We make a trip to the federal government every year. And this chamber is also very focused on military. So that's really kind of one of the reasons that I got brought on board, was to help with that advocacy work because of how important the military community is to San Antonio. Military City, USA is the name that the community tries to live up to, sometimes better than others. But if we're not slugging away at it, it's not gonna improve. So I know some people have said, well, I didn't get this or that, but overall, I think the business community takes a pretty good view towards that and tries to be supportive. So we're pushing hard right now for the direct flight from San Antonio to Washington National, which I think would be very helpful to our leadership and others in the military trying to get to D.C. I know I would have used it when I was on active duty. When we're looking pretty good, it's with Ted Cruz's Committee on Business and Commerce, and they're supporting it and hopefully getting it to the full Senate and then back to the House. But things like that can be helpful to the military. We do a lot of work around protecting Camp Bullis and the other bases from encroachment. We do a lot of work around, business-friendly policies. So if there's something that the state or the city is trying to impose that could limit the ability of businesses to operate or adversely impact them, then we try to support that to allow businesses to go forward. Because, really we think that the way that people get a good quality of life is for businesses to prosper, be able to pay their employees more, and be able to, hire more people in and create better jobs in the community. So we are very focused on the workforce development efforts in the community and the opportunities that are being provided through Alamo colleges and other entities within the community to help train people.
Excellent. And so that's the overarching, right? And so if I was bringing it down to, here's Donna with her little business, you hear that and you're like, okay, that's good. I can get some protection and I can, but on the lower level, like the members themselves, what does that bring to them when they walk in the door there? What are the opportunities there?
Yeah, they're, anything from, hey, I'm a new business, I want you to come help me with my ribbon cutting. That's a very common one.
Oh, yes.
To, hey, I need to meet, people, I provide this service, and I think, one of the big companies in town could use that. Can you connect me to somebody? That can be done. Some of it's going to networking functions, mixers, breakfasts, whatever they are, and just meeting other people and finding out what they do. And then, you've got acquaintances across the community. So when it's time to grow or expand and you need somebody that can do marketing or, print T-shirts, or you need somebody that can help with construction or design, you've met folks, and now you've got a leg in on how to go forward, or people that can help advise you on this, bankers, lawyers, whoever. So there's a lot of different people that go to the mixers and do the networking. And I think it's just a good way to kind of meet folks. We also host events. We just did State of the City last month or earlier this month. And, where the mayor talks, we had about 700 people come out for that to hear what the mayor's vision was for the city of San Antonio. We'll have the county judge in the fall. We bring in congressional leadership. We brought in both senators last year, Cruz and Cornyn. So good opportunities to kind of get in and meet elected officials, to hear from elected officials, and to kind of understand what's being worked. And for a small business, that you don't know what you don't know on, how business friendly things are being worked. There's been some efforts from the city to dictate, paid sick leave to, mandated by the municipal government, where any employer with greater than 6 employees would have to provide paid sick leave. Well,
ouch.
We believe the business should decide. I mean, there's a fight for talent right now. So that business has to decide, what is it your talent wants and how do you best provide that? Some may want sick leave. Some may want just more money. Some may want, other benefits that may be more important than a sick leave. And we don't think the city ought to be mandating one size fits all to everybody else. So we push back very hard on that, among other things.
I learned, so I was kind of joking about the whole idea of networking, right? Just a lot of military people, they haven't been at these high levels where you were. You had to network, right? That was part of your job. You had to learn the other entities and work with them and bring out the best in each other, et cetera, et cetera. But, when you get the master sergeant or the captain or the major, that's maybe been operational most of their life, and maybe more at like the tactical level, getting in their boots on the ground. The idea of networking is like not appealing. And I'll say I was kind of a little bit of me too. And Jay actually reframed it in my head. And he says, kind of get out of your head the whole idea of trying to do business with people. He's like, get the idea of just meeting people. He says, just meet them. That's it. Like, and if you resonate with them, meet them again, and if you don't, and it's interesting because it hit me that in the military, we don't know no. And I say that tongue in cheek because we hear no plenty. But I just mean as far as getting a mission done, we don't know no, right? We're going to get it done. It may be ugly as sin, but it is going to get done somehow, right? And we have to work with people that we may get along with famously, or maybe those aren't people that we'd be inviting to dinner, but we're going to use our skills together and get the mission done, right? When you come out of the military, to me, it was a little bit of an aha moment that you could say no. I could just not. So I say that because when people are getting out there and going into chambers that have organized events and you're meeting, there could be like hundreds of people there, you just have to get to know them. And if it doesn't resonate, no big deal. You don't hate them. You don't like, oh my God. It's just like, we just didn't have anything in common, whatever it is. We get to say no. We get to say, let's try something else. So I love to reframe the idea of networking as just meeting people, and I'm talking at the, the participant level, meeting people, getting to know them. And then if it resonates, do it again. And as people learn about you, and this happens to me now, they're just like, oh yeah, what's her name? Oh yeah, Donna, she works with veterans. And then like they throw things at me like, hey, Donna, it's a veteran thing. And I'm like, okay. What thing is that? I go figure out the thing. So, but they know me because I work with veterans, right? They know Jay because he does executive coaching and that stuff. So they may not know a lot of details, but they know basically what I do. And then they throw things and vice versa, right? If I know somebody, I'll be like, oh, hey, maybe you should meet this person. So it's all about that connection and meeting people where they're at and meeting them authentically. And don't try to impress people with your resume when you're meeting them. Don't.
Well, I think that's right. And for the Ted Lasso fans, I think it's be curious.
Yes.
When you go, like I said, it's a lot in my mind. I always try to be a lot more listening than telling, because I don't know what all these businesses are, and I don't know what they do and how they interact. When I get out of the military, I know, the grocery store, I know, restaurant, from the user perspective, but not anything beyond that. So I found it really rewarding to network and meet people and really be inquisitive. And most people want to talk about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few secret agents out there that can't. And so, for the most part, they'll tell you anything you want to know. And then if that sounds interesting to you, that's something you could pursue. But how do you know? You don't even know what you don't know when you get out. And to me, I was very curious when I got out. I wanted to kind of figure out, I drive by these large buildings full of businesses. What do all those people do? What's out there? What is it that might be being done that I could do that I would find interesting and rewarding and contribute? So I think, I think you can stem some of that concern by just being curious. Just try to learn something new out of every event. Go and talk to people. And there's some that you're going to meet you're not going to learn anything from them, or maybe they don't want to talk much and they want you to talk. Okay. But, there will be somebody that's telling you something that you haven't heard before about what it is they do, or, things that they're involved in, or whatever else is going on. So I think you get a lot out of that. I
think too, as you meet people and then you find the ones you resonate with and stuff, you will find different areas for like mentorship and at different times. You and I were talking last night and you were just like, you gave me some advice and I was already doing it, but you just validated. You're like, yeah, I'd be moving that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And for the reasons that I thought, and you were right there going, mm-hmm. And so you don't know where you're going to find that, right? And you said, be curious and just listen to people and learn from them. And if you connect with them, do it again, and it's real simple.
Yeah, we're members of the Shirts Chamber, where we're located, the Chamber of Shirts Civil-Osoma, getting the full name correct.
That's right. It's big.
And I go to the luncheons, and I intentionally try to sit at tables where I don't know anybody. And I just want to sit down and find out who's there, find out what they're doing. I'm not necessarily, trying to ring up customers.
No.
Okay, now all 7 of you have to come to my restaurant tonight. But I want to find out. Maybe they're doing a business. Maybe they provide linen service at, way less than what we pay our linen provider.
Right.
Maybe they do grease trap cleaning. Maybe it's nothing that I can use directly, but at some point we could team together and do something that would be fun.
Yes. Yes.
So I just try to find out.
No, go ahead.
No, I just try to find out, who's at the table and what they do. And, now it's in my brain as well as I can remember. Sometimes it's, I got her face and I remember what she does, but I can't put the name on it. But then somebody else will know them. So you can always find them.
It took me a while to be comfortable going to sit at a group of people that I had no idea who they were. Some of it was probably imposter syndrome. Some of it was like, please don't ask me a question. It really was. And I'd be straight up, it took me a long time. So people are like, oh, you'll chit chat and you're chirpy and you're this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the extrovert introvert. I really am. But now I'm very comfortable walking in a room, don't know anybody. Hey, how are you? And guess what? The ones that put business forward, trust me, I've got the handshake with the business card in it. Haven't talked to them since. Pretty sure about that. It's just not how I do business. And it's okay. It's okay that they do business that way. That's just not how I do it. And so if you just got to know how you function and know how you do it, and learn that. And then just set your boundaries and then you go.
Yeah.
So simple.
Definitely. And, it's uncomfortable, I think, for most people. It was uncomfortable for me initially.
Mm-hmm.
But, once you start doing it, then it's like, oh, this is great. I met her the last time, I met him the time before. I've got my knowledge of people is growing, and if I need help or if I could help somebody, we've got each other's names, so it's good.
And you made a comment. You said, like, sometimes you'll meet people and maybe they have a service that you're like, ooh, I could use that, and maybe they don't, and maybe a year from now, you're like, oh, who is that? And that actually happened with you, to be honest, because I've known you for quite a while. I don't know, at least a couple of years. I mean, just popping in and out of your restaurant, you'd always say hi. You've met my family, just very light, but I've kind of know who you were, et cetera, et cetera. And then Jay setting up his ETAP course, and he's like, oh, I need to bump. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Dave Peterson would be perfect for whatever he was doing. He's like, oh, you're right. Yeah. And that's like 2 years later. And I was like, hey, go back to talk to Dave. He'd be perfect for this, So you really don't know who you're going to talk to, meet.
Then Jay was looking for somebody with a different background than mine. And, I said, here's a guy that I think would be great. And Jay's talked to him, and he's now come and done some of it. So, yeah, to your point, you never know, what you're going to need, when you're going to need it, and when it's all going to work out. But I think just having that broad net is a great thing to have.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So, is there anything else? Any last thoughts that you have as we wrap this up that you want to impart to the audience?
Well, I think for everybody that's listening or going through transition, you're not alone. Sometimes you feel like you're alone. sometimes you feel like you're the only one having this experience. And so, the work, Donna, that you do and others to support individuals, I think is absolutely critical, because it can be a very stressful time for people.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's hard sometimes to have the faith or belief that you're going to land on your feet and you're going to be okay, but they need to get that, and they need to talk to somebody. So if anybody's struggling with this, hopefully they reach out to you, and if I can help, I'm happy to help, or if I can get more information. But I think, the understanding that you're not alone, that we've all been stressed out by transition at different times in different ways. There's a lot of support out there. So hopefully nobody feels alone, and everybody's, trying to work together. And if they do, they're reaching out correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it just takes the courage to put the hand out, because like you said, you do feel like you're alone. I did, I really kind of thought I was just like, God, why am I falling apart here? And then, I wasn't. There was like 100 other people going through the same thing. I'm sure even you were like, whoa, there's this is a different world I'm in.
I agree.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody, we're going to wrap this up. From all of us here from Beyond the Front Line and our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, we appreciate you if you can like and share. And they always say smash the button, so do that too. And if you want to hear us continuously, you can go to our Coming Home Well at CHW Radio stream that we just started in February. And it has all our podcasts on there live, not live stream, but streaming. And take a listen and see what you think, because we're going to have lots of programs coming on, new shows, things that you can't find anywhere else. So we appreciate the input from all of us here to all of you. Have an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.